At 36 years old, I had discovered that the quietest person in any gathering is often the one carrying the richest experiences, even if nobody notices at first. That lesson became unforgettable during a large family charity festival held at a beautiful countryside estate near Asheville, where my confident cousin Derek seemed determined to prove he was the most talented person in the family while treating everyone else as his audience. Derek loved expensive hobbies, luxury gear, and long speeches about his accomplishments, and he never missed an opportunity to remind everyone how successful he believed he was. As relatives gathered around him laughing at his jokes and admiring his newest equipment, he barely acknowledged me except to offer polite smiles that carried an unmistakable hint of superiority, assuming my quiet personality meant I had little to contribute. The highlight of the afternoon was a professionally organized precision archery competition that challenged participants with targets placed at different distances and angles, demanding patience, balance, and remarkable concentration rather than raw strength. Derek eagerly volunteered to shoot first, confidently announcing that years of studying online tutorials and practicing at private clubs had prepared him to impress everyone watching from the sidelines. When Derek finally stepped onto the shooting line, he adjusted every piece of his expensive equipment with dramatic flair before explaining advanced techniques to younger cousins who listened with wide eyes and complete admiration. His opening shots landed reasonably well, but the longer distance targets quickly exposed small mistakes in his form, causing several arrows to drift far from the center while he blamed changing wind conditions instead of accepting responsibility. After finishing his round, Derek turned toward me with an amused smile and loudly invited me to try, insisting that he would patiently explain the basics so I would not embarrass myself in front of the family. A few relatives laughed softly at his teasing remarks as he handed me one of his spare bows, completely unaware that the simple piece of equipment resting in my hands represented a skill I had quietly spent years mastering long before any of them imagined it. The instant I wrapped my fingers around the bow, years of disciplined practice returned as naturally as breathing, replacing my relaxed expression with calm concentration that only experienced competitors truly understand. I planted my feet firmly, straightened my posture, and drew the string back in one smooth motion, causing a few nearby instructors to pause their conversations as they quietly noticed the precision of my technique. Without rushing a single movement, I released 5 arrows one after another, each leaving the string with the same steady rhythm and controlled follow-through, until the final arrow disappeared into the distant target. The field fell unusually quiet because every shot looked effortless, and even those who knew very little about archery could sense they had just witnessed something far beyond an ordinary performance. When officials signaled that the round was complete, everyone leaned forward expecting to count several separate hits scattered across the target, but instead they found an incredibly tight cluster of arrows packed so closely together that they almost looked like a single impact from a distance. Murmurs of surprise spread through the crowd as relatives exchanged confused glances, struggling to understand how the quiet cousin they had overlooked all afternoon had produced such remarkable accuracy. Derek stared at the target in complete disbelief, blinking several times as though his eyes refused to accept what they were seeing, while the confident smile that had remained on his face throughout the day slowly disappeared. Before he could think of another excuse or joke, the event director began walking toward us with a thoughtful expression, carefully studying my posture, my relaxed breathing, and the disciplined way I lowered the bow after completing the round. Stopping just a few feet away, the director smiled warmly before asking in a respectful voice whether I had once represented the National Development Archery Program at several international competitions years earlier. My relatives immediately turned toward me with expressions of complete surprise, because until that very moment none of them had ever heard a single story about the competitive career I had quietly left behind long before this family gathering ever took place. I smiled modestly and admitted that I had indeed spent many years competing at the highest levels before stepping away from the spotlight to mentor young athletes and enjoy a quieter life. The confession stunned my relatives into silence because they had always assumed I was simply reserved by nature, never imagining that my silence concealed years of dedication, discipline, and remarkable achievements. The event director turned toward the growing crowd and explained that she had watched me compete years earlier, remembering my exceptional consistency and calmness under intense pressure when every shot mattered. She recalled how coaches often used recordings of my performances to teach aspiring archers that true excellence comes from patience, focus, and relentless practice rather than flashy equipment or dramatic confidence. Derek forced an uneasy smile and tried to laugh off the situation, suggesting that anyone could have an unusually lucky round if everything happened to go perfectly for a few minutes. Even as he spoke, his uncertain voice and lowered eyes revealed that he no longer believed his own explanation, while the people around him quietly recognized the difference between genuine mastery and empty boasting. The director gently shook her head before pointing toward the target, explaining that such extraordinary precision could never be explained by luck because every arrow reflected thousands of hours of disciplined training and unwavering commitment. Several experienced instructors standing nearby nodded in agreement, adding that even small details in my posture, breathing, and release showed years of professional coaching that casual observers would never notice. The atmosphere around our family changed completely as conversations shifted away from Derek's expensive gear and confident speeches toward genuine curiosity about the experiences I had chosen to keep private for so many years. Instead of asking about equipment or trophies, my relatives wanted to hear the lessons I had learned through competition, and for the first time that afternoon, everyone listened with quiet respect instead of loud excitement. After several moments of silence, Derek stepped forward with a noticeably different expression and sincerely apologized for judging me based on appearances instead of taking the time to know my story. I accepted his apology with a warm smile because proving him wrong had never been my goal. I simply believed that real confidence never needs to compete for attention. The rest of the afternoon became one of the most enjoyable family gatherings we had shared in years, as experienced instructors offered helpful tips while everyone took turns practicing together without worrying about winning or showing off. Derek surprised everyone by encouraging younger cousins, celebrating their progress, and asking thoughtful questions instead of delivering long speeches about himself. That evening, our family gathered around long wooden tables beneath glowing string lights, sharing homemade food, laughter, and stories that had nothing to do with trophies or expensive equipment. For the first time in years, every conversation felt genuine because people were interested in learning about one another rather than trying to impress the room with exaggerated accomplishments. As I drove home beneath a sky painted with brilliant shades of orange and purple, I realized that true respect is never earned through loud words, flashy possessions, or endless self-promotion, but through quiet dedication and consistent actions. From that day forward, Derek carried himself with far more humility, and our family remembered the festival not because of a competition, but because it reminded everyone that hidden talents deserve appreciation and every person has a story worth discovering. If this story taught you that humility, kindness, and perseverance will always outshine arrogance, we hope it inspires you to look beyond first impressions and appreciate the unseen journeys of the people around you. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. We create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content for you.